India practically has very limited refining capacity. So if you look at most of the rare earth that we do today, almost 95% plus is imported, and a lot of it from China. So that is where I think the National Critical Minerals Mission, which has been launched by the Government of India earlier this year, both diversifies the supply risks as well as gives a boost to the domestic manufacturing, both of critical minerals and primarily of rare earth.
Abhijit, before we get into the refining capacity of India and some of the questions around that, can you help us understand with what India has in terms of critical minerals like copper, nickel, cobalt, and even that of rare earths? What exactly is in the ground that India can work with in terms of reserves?
So if you look at primarily copper, India is a refining heavy country. So we have just one large PSU called as Hindustan Copper, which mines copper, but we have almost 10x the refining capacity available in the country, which primarily therefore imports copper ore and gives out the smelted copper out. If you look at the rare earths, India, by the way, has vast unexplored potential. We have the fifth largest rare earth resources globally available with us. But the proven reserves is where I think the problem lies. So the real issue is about exploration, getting to from resources to proven reserves, and then mine those reserves to get ore out. That is the real problem.
Abhijit, let's talk about that because we did discover this also and talked about this at length on CNBC a few months ago, the rare earth reserves. And we were surprised to see that India has among the third or the fourth largest rare earth reserves in the world. You just highlighted that. Where in India are these rare earths located? And if there's so much, why not just mine them domestically? What's stopping India from doing that?
I think primarily the reserves are located across, so primarily the central and the eastern part of India, but also within the major tribal belts across both the western and the southern regions as well. The problem that we have today, primarily, three concerns I will sort of put on the table. The first one, which I had mentioned earlier, which is lack of proven reserves. So when you have resources in mining, when you have resources, you need to get to exact reserves, you need to do the infill drilling, you need to get down to the right mining plan to get it out. So there is this gap between, so the first problem is the gap between resources and reserves. I think that's where the National Critical Mission now has mandated GSI to go and explore these 1,300 leases into proven reserves. That's the first point. Second is the the regulatory timeline from start of the project to getting the first ore. Typically, India takes 7 to 10 years to get there, even in the optimistic scenario. Whereas if you look at even China or the developed economies like Australia and Canada, where mining is done well, they typically take anywhere between 2 to 5 years. And a lot of this depends on environment clearances, land rehabilitation and resourcing, and the government delays that come in place. So that is the second place where we need to sort of make an impetus. And third is wholehearted private sector participation along with the PSUs. Today, if you see in India, most of the rare earths come under Department of Atomic Energy. A lot of them are strategically sensitive, and the sector is not fully open to the private sector players, which is changing now. But those are primarily the three reasons why India is not able to mine those ores.
Yeah. Abhijit, I wonder if do environmental concerns also play into the reticence of India to tap into or to discover how much of these reserves are resources? Because that is one of the reasons why China also closed down some of the rare earth mines in China. Are environmental concerns also something that's keeping India hesitant in playing this particular card?
No, it does. And that's where that 7 to 10 year time frame that I talked about, a number of years in between are the whole environmental clearance that the time takes. But as I said earlier, many of these reserves are in tribal and in forest areas of the mountains in India. Whether you look at the central eastern region or way up north or even on the western Ghats, you will find these are within the mountain ranges, within the forests, and therefore that's an added layer of creating an environmental complexity of getting the right permissions to make sure that there is a balance between preserving the environment and doing the development and progress.
Is there also perhaps a need for coordination between federal and state governance? Because as we know, to tap into these things, you'll have to make sure that local governments also have approvals, and they're also at least their concerns or perhaps their stakes are satisfied as well. Abhijit, what are your thoughts on that?
I think primarily over the last 1 to 2 years, this coordination between the center and the states, particularly on mining, has gone up significantly. We are seeing a lot of coherence and trying to do things together. Of course, more needs to be done, but I think the state governments are also now tightening their belt to make things happen faster. For example, Odisha is one state where things are moving very fast. Chhattisgarh is another state very recently where a lot of these things are happening well. So we are seeing that given the criticality of the strategic importance of these minerals for India, I think both the center and the state are on the move as of now.
Yeah. Abhijit, you mentioned something that's interesting here and perhaps important for our viewers to understand that just because you have reserves doesn't mean that translates into resources. And that seems to be playing out also with regards to lithium. I mean, 2 years ago, there was a huge buzz about that massive lithium reserve discovery out in Jammu Kashmir that might put India among the top miners in the world. That seems to have cooled down. And then we're also getting news that from some geologists in India that could actually mean only 20,000 tons of lithium carbonate in the ore body. So there's a discrepancy here, and we're trying to figure out whether or not India actually has those lithium reserves. What's the latest, and can you perhaps help us understand whether or not they have the lithium or not? Because we're a little confused.
No, I think the jury is yet to be out on it. Exploration is happening. What we had thought initially, the resources and reserves both are potentially lesser than what we had thought originally. But I would not like to jump the gun right now to say that it's either 0 or 1. I think we'll have to wait till the geologists come out and do the G2, G3 mapping and say how much really is possible to take from this Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh areas. However, I think while we talk a lot about this Jammu and Kashmir thing, over these last 6 months, there are at least 10 other areas within India where a lot of initial promise is being seen. A lot of it has also not been publicized much in the media, given they want to wait for confirmations that need to happen. But I'm expecting that over the next 6 to 12 months, some significant announcements will be on the corner.
Yeah, you said that it's going to matter. We'll have to wait for the G2G mapping surveys to come out. How long do these usually take, Abhijit?
Typically, to get to a confirmation of the understanding, it's anywhere between 12 to 18 months. But in this case, I believe there have been delays. And I would still say another 6 to 12 months is what one needs to look at. I know the original number around the lithium was around 6 million ton or so, if I remember it correctly. But it's likely to be lesser than what we had initially assumed in this particular case.
Yeah, about 5.9 million metric tons, if I'm not mistaken. You're within the ballpark there, Abhijit. Let's talk about the constraints, and perhaps this also answers why India is looking to other sources to import, because it takes time to develop these, survey and assess how much is there, which also leads us to India perhaps looking to source rare earths from Myanmar, the way China has in recent years, actually. But why do that if the refining needs to take place in China anyway? What kind of hedge does that give India? Because if you get those rare earths from Myanmar, you'll still have to find processing facilities that will probably be somewhere in the Middle Kingdom anyway.
Yeah. No, I think we solved one part of the problem, which was mining. But I think the more important part, like you rightly said, is the refining part of it. And I'll slightly take a detour because before answering your question, is this refining of rare earths is not easy. And it has taken China almost 20 to 25 years to hone that ability to refine. So I think for India, while we are talking about Myanmar and so on, which is absolutely right, I think in the short term, uh, there isn't much hedge than to import and that dependence on China in the short term will remain. However, I think while a lot of this exploration, other things are moving, I think the need of the hour is to do the right set of strategic partnerships on refining. And the way to do this is friendly nations like Russia, Brazil, Kazakhstan, even some countries in South America like Bolivia and others. I think have some very good metallurgical institutes with which the right strategic partnerships can be done to create an alternative refining hub for rare earth. And this is where the whole uh, global north and south can come together and create alternatives to China on rare earth refining. And India is in the right position to take lead. So yes, to answer your question, in the short term, Myanmar and others won't necessarily help because we'll continue to have the refining dependence on China. However, in the middle to long term, I think we have to go uh, really hard on creating this refining technologies and facilities as an alternate for overall global balance.